Bastian. Here. Clark. Here. Fish. Here. Hausman. Parsons. Wakefield.
Okay, we have a quorum. If I could have a motion for approval of the agenda, please.
Second. Yes. I hesitated. Thank you.
Motion by Clark, second by Bastian to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, approval of the agenda. All right, this is our time for visitors and timed items. Anyone out in the audience that would like to address the council at this time, you have up to 5 minutes. If you are interested, come on up and state your name and address at the microphone. Got a quiet group tonight, huh? Okay. All right. Tonight, our sole purpose of our agenda is to meet our two mayor candidates, and TJ was here first, so I gave him the opportunity to draw for positioning. He got spot 1, and then Paul, you have spot number 2.
Joe Hausman withdrew her application today by email.
So TJ, why don't you want to come on up and just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in being the mayor, and then we will ask some questions if we've got them. Is that okay, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
All right, good afternoon. My name is TJ Cameron, 2417 East Lopez Lane in Brandon here. And I have been actively involved in the community, especially over the last year or so in the city municipal government activities, as far as running for council and active member of coming to the meetings and such. But I've been living in Brandon for about 8 years. My wife grew up here, born and raised. Her family is from this area. And, you know, what really interests me is, you know, from a young age, people always said to me, you know, hey, you should do something, and you should be in city government, or you should be in government, or you should do something, you know. And I always kind of laughed a little bit, but I've also always had a belief that you should do some kind of public service in one form or another for the betterment of whether it be the community or the country or anything of the sort. And for me, you know, some people serve in the military, which is very appreciated. I know there's some people here that have served in the military and, you know, currently help some nonprofits, and I appreciate that. Other people choose to do things such as, you know, EMTs and other type of things that I would consider public service, police officers, civil service officers, things like of that sort. I feel like my skill set best fits in giving back to my community in the form of, you know, city government. My skill set and experience, I think I can bring a lot to the community, a lot to the role of mayor, and that's how I want to give back to my community. I feel like that's my purpose and my reason and my way of giving back, because I think everybody should give back in one way or another. I can tell you a little bit about my background too. I'm currently the vice president of a company called Shoe Sensation. We're a small retailer that are in small towns, very similar to Brandon. About 180 store chain. When I joined the company a few years ago, we were just over 100 stores, so I've helped the growth of the company over the last 80 stores. In my realm of responsibility, I have 54 stores currently. That's varied anywhere from 40 to 60. And I've opened personally over the last 2 years, along with a team, of course, but been part of the planning, projection, real estate, negotiations, city relations. I've been part of almost 30 of those stores just in my region alone. With that, you know, I've built a nice network of folks in the community, and in those 54 cities, they're very similar. Matter of fact, we would have a location in Brandon if we were a little further away from a metropolitan area like Sioux Falls, because our target market's about 30 miles away or more. That said, at every grand opening that we've done, and many times when I'm visiting these areas with my district managers, we go down and we introduce ourselves to the city council, we introduce ourselves to the mayor, we introduce ourselves to the city administrator. We make it a purpose at every opening. There's usually either a county commissioner, the mayor of that area, or you know, a city council member, definitely the Chamber of Commerce. And all of those folks I introduce myself to personally, and I have a network of at least a dozen or two that I've actually exchanged phone numbers with, and that I think could be a great asset to our community as well, because as we grow, many of these communities have gone through a lot of the same things that we'll face. So I think that network would be beneficial to be able to call upon at any time and say, hey, you know, here's something we're facing. We're really trying to work through it. Have you gone through this before? And I think that would be something that would be a great benefit in the role of mayor here. Prior to that, I also have had some entrepreneurial experience. Many people in Brandon know me from owning the bowling alley, which was the one experience that didn't end up turning out the way that I expected. But we gave it our best, and when I moved back to Brandon, I chose to buy a business in Brandon. You know, there was several other options at the time. There was a local bar and restaurant over in Harrisburg that was for sale at the time, much different price, very similar books, but we really did want to do something here in our hometown. It's unfortunate it didn't work out for us, but I met a lot of people, a lot of great people. I probably would have been involved or potentially ran for council even back then, but I had to focus on my family and my professional career when that didn't work out for us and get everything back in order before I could then again present myself to become active in the community again. So I'm at a great time in my life to do that, and I'd like to give back. But aside from the bowling alley, early in my career, I opened a chain of small retail stores. I've provided a resume for you guys too, just to see some of this experience in my packet, but I started a little kiosk in the mall, and I grew that to 60 plus stores at one time in 8 different states and all over the country. So it was quite the experience. I learned a lot of great things from it. You know, I think building a business is like building a community in many ways. You know, things move at a little bit different pace in the private versus public sector. Of course, I understand that, and I respect and appreciate that. And when you're in the, you know, the public sector, you're not just building something for yourself and your employees, but you're building something for your community, your neighbors, your friends, your family. So I definitely recognize the differences, but I think a lot of the experience are relative to each other. And I believe that I could bring a lot to the city. So that's a little bit about my background. Be happy to answer any questions. Mm-hmm. While Mr. Bastian is, Councilman Bastian is working on his microphone there, one other thing I would like to point out too is in preparation for the potential interim appointment, you know, I've been very dedicated to the process. In coming to as many meetings as I have, I feel like I'd be a great candidate that could seamlessly help this transitional period and make sure that we continue to move forward without any bumps. I mean, really, I think the interim appointment is to continue government and make sure that everything moves smoothly and seamlessly, and I do believe I can do that. In addition to the meetings, I've had several one-on-one meetings. Everybody that's sitting at the table today I've had a meeting with. Just to give you a few examples, August 20th, I met with Mrs. Clark and Tim Wakefield. 21st, I did a ride-along with MedStar and Jay Major. On the 22nd, I had an opportunity to meet with our new city engineer, Tammy. On the 24th, I met with Chuck Parsons. On the 31st, I met with Joe Hausman. On the 9th of September, I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Bastian. On September 7th, I had an opportunity to meet with Mrs. Fish. On the 19th, I met with our prior city engineer to learn a little bit more about current projects and how they got started, and that was Paul Sonnell. And on the 19th, I also had an opportunity to meet with one of our major vendors, which was Stockwell Engineering, to hear about their juggling many projects within our community, and I had a lot of questions for them. On the 20th, I met with Split Rock Township, a member of their board, and I also had another opportunity to meet with our city engineer, Tammy, again, to recap some of the things that I learned at that point. So I've been very dedicated to this process, and I think it'd be a great, seamless transition.
Chuck had a couple questions for you, as well as I did, just from some of the things from the paper itself and the article that was done. What did you mean by the council being far into the weeds?
Absolutely. So I think that everybody on the council, and when I say in the weeds, it's not in any disrespectful manner or skill set or anything like that. What I mean by that is I feel like the city council members have had to be so far involved in many of the processes because of, unfortunately, all this negativity and this pressure that's come out, that I really feel like in the mayor's seat, that person could be a great liaison between the city staff and the council. So the way I see it is, you know, the council represents our community and the voters. They set the priorities for the community, and they talk about what is important. From there, I believe that the mayor should be a great liaison between our city staff, Brian Reed, Christina, Tammy, and help set those priorities that come from the council. So when I say in the weeds, what I mean by that is our prior mayor has done a fantastic job, great raising our community, but as we go forward, I think that there needs to be an assertive role in that position that helps prioritize those things and gives trust to our city administration and our city staff and says, hey, you know, we have appointed these great employees, we've hired these great employees for our staff, and here's the goals that the council would like to outline. You set the goal, you establish, does the city staff have the proper resources necessary to accomplish this goal? And that would be in collaboration with talking to Brian, and he would talk to his team. Then you set a timeline. And I think that's one thing that we may have an opportunity is establishing a really good timeline or a goal. Doesn't mean we're always going to hit that goal, but if we set that timeline and communicate that timeline well, and then from there, there's an accountability piece. And I think that mayor plays a great role back and forth. And right now, of course, without a mayor, I think that it's caused many people that are sitting at your seats to have to get so far into those processes where really you're here to represent the voters, I believe, and make decisions, trust our city staff, saying, hey, here's our goal, here's the timeline, please bring us a few things. We'd like to vote, and we'll vote on, you know, we want your recommendations, form committees if necessary. Committees bring the recommendations, Brian Reed brings the recommendations from his city staff, and we as a body here at the council and the mayor vote. You know, the mayor I know doesn't have a vote unless there's a tiebreaker, but unfortunately, I feel like you guys have had to be so far involved because there hasn't been that streamlined process. So that's what I mean by a little bit too far in the weeds. You're welcome.
I have a two-part question for you, TJ. The first part is, what do you think one thing that the city is doing right now is being done very well?
I think there had been a lot of, well, there's several things, first of all, that the city is doing well. So I guess if I was to narrow it down to one, I'd have to think for just a moment. But there's a lot of things the city is doing well. One thing that I've seen a dramatic improvement on, again, I think there's a lot of things going well, but one thing that I've seen a dramatic improvement on is the communication, because I've called that out as potentially an opportunity, you know, a way to communicate to our community. There's several different venues and several different media outlets, and I've seen a huge jump in the way that the city has started to communicate in other things just other than the paper and meetings and councils that may engage people that don't normally get involved or don't normally take the time to understand what's going on. And I've seen a huge increase. For instance, you know, social media, there's been a lot of great posts coming from the city as of late, and I think that's gone a long ways with the community. Just seeing it come straight from the source, from a positive and factual source, getting shared on social media much more proactively. There's a big group of folks that, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, that's where they rely on getting a lot of their information. And, you know, they don't necessarily watch the, you know, YouTube videos of an hour and a half to 4 hours of our meetings, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, as much as I wish everybody could do that, first of all, we couldn't fit them in this room. Another great outlet is our paper, and Jill and the Brandon Valley Journal do a great job. Of course, we have another paper that does a good job too, communicating things, and there's a certain group of folks that read the paper. But where we had that open opportunity, I think the city has done a seriously great job stepping up the efforts to communicate to a group that may not rely on those two sources alone to get in touch with a few more of our residents. So that's what I would say is a great improvement, because like I said, I think the city's doing a lot of great things right now.
Okay, thank you. And then
Welcome.
the part B to that is flip-flop. So what do you feel is an area that is in need of immediate improvement right now?
If you would have asked me the same question, maybe even just a few weeks ago, I would have said the communication piece, because I think the more we can communicate, the better. But as I just mentioned, we made huge strides. One thing that I think could continue to improve that, I guess I kind of want to answer this with two things. One, I think we need to continue to focus on that communication piece, and I understand we have attained a third-party consultant to help us with some of the communication on, you know, other things like social media and things like that, which I think is fantastic. But I think that's something that the better we can get out the positive information straight from the source, the more proactively and the quicker we can get that information out straight from the source, the better. Because unfortunately, there's been a ton of negativity out there, and some of those folks may be just dying for information. You know, there's always going to be a few negative Nellies out there, and you can't get to everybody. But the more information we can share, the better. So even though we've made huge strides, I see that as a little bit of an opportunity. The other part of that would be in the role of the mayor, and that speaks to what I talked about when I first opened, just that streamlined process and setting we always set goals and we identify opportunities, but one piece that I think is huge that I believe I could also help would be setting the timelines together, sitting down with Brian and saying, hey, let's establish a timeline to bring back to the council. Council, when would you like to see these things resolved? And we set a goal. We're not always going to make that goal, but to set that goal and then communicate it out to the community would be huge, because we've been working on so many things that have been out there that people are like, oh, what's going on? Why haven't we done anything? And you know what? We have done a lot of stuff about it. We've done a lot of great things, like for instance with water, the water committee informing that. But how do we get the word out, and how do we say, hey, here's the opportunity and here's the goal we'd kind of like to hit? So establishing that timeline and setting the goal is the next thing that I think would be an opportunity that we could immediately put some traction behind. And I think that I have a great skill set that could help with that as well. You're welcome.
So I have, I guess, 3 questions that I'd like to ask. I don't know if we're going to go round and round and take turns. Is probably the best way. So can you explain what your vision of how the city will provide customer service to our residents? So really that customer service piece, what is that vision to you?
Thanks, Tim. Customer service has been in my wheelhouse and forte for a very long time. And as a city government, the reason that we are here, not just to establish order and direction, but obviously to provide a service and service, or customer service, as you put it, to our residents. So I think that's one of our main purposes. A few things that I think that my vision would be, you know, great ways of communicating to the community, because I do kind of feel like there's a few, you know, and this isn't a science, and I have no factual basis. This is a theory of mine, a theory. So I believe that, you know, there's probably roughly, you know, 10 or 15, 20% of our residents that are really engaged and care a lot about city government, and they want to know what's going on, you know, because they really want to be involved. There's that percentage. Then I do believe, again, this is my theory, the next group is about another 30 or 40% that care, and they read the paper, and they, you know, watch the releases on Facebook, and they, you know, maybe occasionally watch a meeting if somebody says, hey, there's a subject you should really check out. And they'll definitely show up and vote because it's important to them. But then there's also, you know, from there, if that makes up 30 or 40%, you know, there's another, call it 60% of our community that when it matters is when something is awry or something affects them personally. And suddenly they're very, you know, engaged, when in the past, they've trusted the city government that they've elected to not have to worry about things. So to provide the best amount of service to them, I think we, first of all, invite them to as many of these types of forums as possible. Second of all, we have a clear vision of communicating all the different agendas so that that group that sometimes wants to know what's going on can find that piece of information somewhere within all the sources that they prefer to use, not necessarily that only we prefer to communicate in, but they can take that and say, okay, hey, I found something affected me personally, and I said something somewhere, somebody directed me exactly where to get the answer. And I think the better we can do at that would be great. So a lot of it comes down to communication. Many times in, you know, the private sector, when I've had confidential, you know, best team surveys and things about leadership, you know, it's almost always communication is in one of the top 3 opportunities. It's almost an industry standard in, you know, the retail or private sector in those confidential surveys. Communication always comes up as a really high opportunity. So my vision would include a very comprehensive and taking a really hard look, and including the consultants that, like consulting services as of late that we've brought on, of how can we really communicate to that entire base. Because I think the folks that have trusted the government and they elect us to do so, and it just, you know, they don't really have to feel like they need to be involved until something affects them personally. But if we can have a way to communicate to those folks effectively, I think that is golden for the future.
Another one from Chuck. Please be specific as to how you're more qualified than the other candidates.
So there's only one other candidate now from what I understand, but I think that specifically the network that I have established brings a large piece of qualification as far as bringing that to the table and being able to call upon that network when we are facing challenges that maybe they have already faced. So number one there. Number two, I've had not only the business and private sector experience, but I've also had numerous entrepreneurial experiences, which I believe as you build a business, you're building a city, you're building a future, and there's things that you learn from that that you can't learn from any other resource. only can you learn things in failure of business and success of business in that particular format. So I think that that is a huge piece that gives me an advantage over other candidates. When it comes to equal qualifications, you know, had a lot of planning experience for future. I mean, in my current role and in past roles, we look at, you know, 30, 60, 90-day plans, but we also look at 3, 5, and 10-year plans for growth. So I think that's a equal piece. From budgeting and such, you know, I've called out pretty specifically, but, you know, just my payroll budget alone for my region is equal to pretty close to our general fund budget. So, you know, these few things are equal. So, but I originally called out at the beginning a few things I think give me a slight advantage. You're welcome.
All right, what do you think of the proposed ordinance change as it's related to the aldermanic form of government and the responsibilities as mayor?
Well, I haven't seen all the final, but I understand the proposed, as I understand the proposed, is really looking at distribution of power, you know, because I understand that there's some concerns as if a mayor comes in and holds a personal grudge for some reason in a worst case scenario situation. You know, we have a city staff that, you know, some are sitting here today, and an appointed official that at some point, you know, hey, I just think this person needs to go for whatever reason or another. And I think when you make a change, there has to be a lot more to it. So I think the proposed ordinance does a little bit more distribution of power. It would, in a sense, force the mayor to take consultation of the governing body at the council, which a good mayor should do anyways before making a decision like that, in my opinion. But it almost is like a check and balance and forces that individual to take those consultation of, hey, here's some things that I'm seeing. Can we talk through this? Can I get your feedback? Can we have a couple of, you know, executive sessions confidentially between the elected officials and maybe our city attorney if necessary? But I think that it just puts a safeguard in place that distributes the power and causes that leader to do the things they probably should do anyways, because it's like compared to the private sector. You know, if a CEO is going to make a decision of the company, oftentimes if it's a major decision of the key players like vice presidents or like COOs or our city administrator is sort of the COO of the city. You know, those are major changes, and you have to take the consultation of, for instance, the board of directors in the private sector, and I think it's just a great check and balance system.
So a quick piggyback on Brett's question. If you were appointed mayor, would there be any immediate staffing changes that you would like to see?
No. And why I say that is I believe the appointment piece of mayor should be to, in my opinion, continue to make sure that our government functions smoothly during a transitional period. So in my opinion, the role of an appointed mayor would be to make sure that that transition is smooth. At which point eventually there's an election, and that's when the people decide, hey, here's what we'd like to see for the change or a vision of our entire future as a community. But during an appointed period, I don't think unless there's a critical situation that happens that really an appointed mayor should make sweeping changes of any kind. I think we really should continue forward. We're a great community, got a lot of great things going, and I think that person needs to make sure that the role is smooth and continues to function until we elect a new a new mayor, sorry. Let it slip, yeah.
Watch out.
As we have an election coming up for that, so it's been top of mind, of course, thinking about it and following it.
So you had talked a little bit earlier about this, but what relationships have you already built that you will leverage in this role, whether they're very regional here to Sioux Falls and Brandon area versus, you know, globally and nationwide? What relationships would you leverage and how?
More locally, I have a network. I have a pretty large network, but I also have a close network of business owners, even community members, and even some of you that sit on the council that I call on occasionally for feedback and things like that. But locally, I believe that as we grow and as we try to expand economic development, as we face residential development, as we offer services and recreational activities to our community and balance all that, I think having mentors close by is very important in that role to say, as they've grown huge businesses and sold them, for instance, got a couple of those folks in my network, I often call on them in my current role for feedback, and I would continue to do so. Aside from that, I think I pretty clearly, explained some of the more regional and national networks that I have built in regards to not only just city officials, but city staff, other Chamber of Commerce's in cities very similar to the size of Brandon, where I could call on that network for feedback as we need things. I also believe I could even introduce some of our city staff to those appropriate or equal positions in other cities, which would be huge for them to develop that kind of, and they probably have some of that already, I'm sure, but to, if Tammy were to come to Brian or to me, or Brian were to come to me and say, hey, here's something we're facing, and geez, out of all those other communities that you've got folks in, I'd really like to partner with somebody that has this, or has dealt with this, or has this skill set, or here's something where I feel like I have an opportunity to improve in. Do you know somebody out there that you think would be a great peer mentor? And I think I could introduce some of those relationships as well.
So if you're mayor, you're going to be asked frequently about our water. And I would assume one of the most simplistic questions that you would be asked is our water safe?
I drink our water every day. My son, who's 3 years old, drinks our water every day. I drink straight from, I guess, the fridge filter. So in a sense, I have a water softener and a filter, but I didn't even have a water softener until probably less than 12 months ago, or maybe right around 12 months ago. And we do have hard water, but I don't think that that's a safety risk. We do meet all of the EPA standards. However, standards are a standard, and I do think we should strive to always be at the least amount possible versus just being at the standard. But do I think our water's safe? Absolutely. Matter of fact, I recently had that question asked by a great friend of mine, and it was in the paper. I mentioned him as well, who's lives in Spearfish currently and just received a job offer in downtown Sioux Falls at an engineering firm. And he does landscape architecture, and they were thinking about where to move, and he called me and asked me a couple of questions. And one thing, because it's been all over media, was water. And we talked in depth about it. I mean, really, he said, well, what do you think about the water situation? I said, you know what, the city has created a water committee, which I think is doing a great job. We've made strides in what we're going to do for supply, because I think additional sustainable supply in the future is something that has been in, what are we going to do? And as of late, we've made some great strides towards that. But in a safety factor, I told him, absolutely, you should move to Brandon. Like, same thing I said to you, I drink the water every single day. Do I think we should always strive to be as best as possible versus just the standard? Yes, 100%, crystal clear. The best possible, not just at the standard, but it also has to come at a reasonable and affordable expense to our citizens. So we have to decide, and we have to weigh those, and we have to take a lot of feedback. And the Water Committee has brought a lot of that, and the Conservation Committee has brought a lot of that too. But how do we gather that feedback to, how do we balance getting it to not just below a standard, but to certain zeros, and I'm not a technical expert in all the different ratings, but how do we get it as low as possible versus just at the standard, and at what cost, and where's the balance? Mm-hmm.
Should you not be selected to be appointed to the mayor, how will you be active and continue to help our community?
Thanks for asking. Well, first of all, I'll run for open election in April, and I intend to do so. But in addition to that, just like when I didn't win the city council race, if anything, it encouraged me to be more active, even more active. I've continued to come to meetings. I've continued to try to offer, my, I guess, opinions and, things like the fireworks committee, and volunteer to be a part of that. And I think I will continue to be an active citizen regardless. I just really feel that my skill set could bring something to our community that would be a great way to give back. But I will definitely continue to be active in the community. Chuck asked me that same question when we met. Will I continue to be active? And the answer was absolutely yes.
I didn't know we had a quota. So we recently changed how we run the meetings with the new interim mayor, with the public comments. Not that it's a significant deal, but I'm just curious on what your process would be if you were seated up there for public comments.
I've thought a lot about that, and me and Barb talked a little bit about that also when we met. You know, I think it took a lot of courage, and it deserves a lot of recognition to establish a form of structure and control. So for that, Barb, I congratulate you, because that was something that, you know, after sitting through a 4.5-hour meeting or 4-hour meeting one time, it did get a little lengthy. And I know I personally have offered, you know, my public opinion on numerous subjects. That said, I think that we could tweak that some, and I think that there should be time for public comment, not just at the beginning, but how I have currently envisioned it. And I'd want to gather some more feedback just from this body and from Barb also, because she's the one who's had to sit in this role and make these decisions, so I would take her feedback as well. But I think we have a great opportunity at the beginning, and I think that's a great start. But as we discuss the actual agenda items, sometimes in the agenda comes up specifics that we didn't think about at the beginning of the meeting. So as we get to that agenda item where we may assume that it's one thing and then it maybe takes a different turn, I think that it would be appropriate to offer some controlled public input during that time as well. And a great example, and again, this is all a beginning theory because I'd want to take some additional feedback, but one example of something that I would think would be a fair compromise. So we do the open at the beginning, 5 minutes. I love that part of it. After each subject or prior to a vote, after council discussion, we may be able to allot 5 minutes to the topic. And then each person that comes up has up to, say, a minute, for example, to talk about the additional thoughts on that topic. At which point I think that the mayor should keep control of the meeting and can yield that time, per se, to the individuals that want to speak on it. If one becomes repetitive, so 3 people come up and they want to say the same topic, I think that the mayor should have the authority to say, look, that part of this has already been discussed. So if anyone has anything new to bring up, please approach the mic and we'll yield the remainder of the 5 minutes or give you a minute, but we don't want 5 people to say the exact same thing and take up all 5 minutes. So I think that it would be a specified time frame, and I put 5 minutes as an example, which may or may not be the exact right time, but as people talk, if I'm up here giving my opinion and there's another person right behind me and they start to talk about the exact same part of it, I think it's appropriate to say, look, we have discussed this part of it. TJ just expressed that same concern. If you have something new to add to the subject, please go ahead. But otherwise, I'd like to yield a minute to maybe the next person that has something new. So that's where I think we could build a great compromise.
And my last question would be about your mayoral legacy. Let's say you were voted in the spring, you served for 4 years. What would you be known for?
I think that I'd be known for a fun-loving, active community member, close and engaged with, the residents, my neighbors, communicating with the community. I've bounced around some ideas of, hey, maybe we do a 2-minute Mayor of the Month message. Maybe that's in the form of a Facebook Live, but also, and I even shared this idea with Jill, maybe that's in the form of a little release in the paper also, just an overall update. Hey, here's a couple of projects that we're working on as a community. Just want to make you guys aware of it, coming straight from the mayor. Also, hey, here's a community member or a community contributor that I'd like to recognize for their great community contribution. I think of places like Linda Weber at the food pantry or other people that give back to the community that do it so selflessly, but that little recognition would be a great positive message. So I think it'd be a fun-loving, very active communicator. People would recognize me, and I think often that happens now because I do like to talk and be social and be in the mix. I think I'd be known as very involved in this community and very excited about our future, and I think people would remember me for that as something a little bit different of, hey, anytime I had a question, there was TJ.
Council members, any further questions? So one final question, TJ. So how do you feel your time management can be handled? I know you do have to travel. You got a little guy, that's 3, you got one on the way.
Yep.
Are you concerned about that? We'd like to have you out as the face of Brandon. How do you feel about that?
I feel very confident in my ability to manage my personal time and professional time, which I have had to do my entire career. But as far as the community involvement piece, I definitely think that I have the time to do so, and I have the support from my family to do so as well, which I think is huge. You know, my wife is COO of the home. Not only that, but she works a full-time job in addition to that. And the way that we see my contribution and activeness in the community and being out there and being the face of the community is, you know what, I'm helping build a better future and a great future and continuing the, legacy of Brandon, because Brandon's a great community. And me being out there and having some time away from family and planning travel and business around some of that, because there is a balance, and there may be times where I'll have to miss something here, but there'll also be times where I have an obligation to this role that my employer will be flexible with me to make sure that I can make those commitments, because we've had some discussions about that. So I have support on both the professional and the personal and family side as a contribution to our community and it being part of our future. So a little bit of time away from one or the other pays back tenfold.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your perseverance. Appreciate your coming forward. Thanks for all your answers. Everybody's good? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you guys for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, TJ. Come on up, Paul. And we'll just ask you to do the same process. Tell us a little bit about why you'd like to be mayor and about yourself, and if you want to push that button.
Paul Lundberg, 409 Westview Drive, Brandon. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to hear us out here and get to know us a little better, and for your big job of appointing an interim mayor here, and it is a big job. It is from now until the May timeframe, and it's an important position for you guys to have to vet, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to each of us. If I can, I'll just give you a little bit of background on myself. I was born and raised in Madison, South Dakota, 18 years there. Went to college at University of South Dakota, received my undergraduate degree in accounting. Went off into the work world in a small CPA firm in Rock Rapids, Iowa, a little 10-person firm there. Met my wife, spent 4 years there, met my wife there, and she was not real big on living in Rock Rapids, Iowa, plus she was employed in Sioux Falls, so made the journey over to Sioux Falls and worked 1 year as an internal auditor for a large trucking firm in Sioux Falls. And then it carry forward time frame, it's about 1990, and I applied for the job in Brandon at the Brandon Valley School District and received that job, and I've been there ever since. Almost 29 years I've been with the Brandon Valley School District as their business manager. As I said, I met my wife and married in 1989. We've been married just about 30 years. I have one daughter, Kate, 17-year-old senior in high school at Brandon Valley High School right now. She'll be off pursuing her career endeavor, college endeavors pretty quickly. So she's the joy of our life right now, but she'll be gone here pretty quick, and I'll have to fill a gap in there somehow. I've been very active in the community. I've known a lot of you people through my involvement in the community, just as my school position. I've just had a lot of opportunity to serve on a lot of committees and be active in the committee. I jotted down a few of them on my application. Member of the, the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the school liaison for the Chamber of Commerce, so I've been on there for many years. I was a charter member of the Brandon Valley Community Foundation. I'm a member of the Development Foundation currently, and I'm also a member of the Council's Development Committee that they have formed. Member of the Sioux Valley MAC, Member Advisory Committee. All these committees, the fun stuff that I got to do, I coached youth softball for 8 years, coached my daughter in youth softball, so that was the fun stuff. We had a competitive traveling softball team around the 3-state area that I coached for 8 years. If I can, just kind of go into my credentials a little bit more and why I want to be mayor. I just really want to look you all in the eye and say, I have a genuine and sincere interest in being the mayor of Brandon. I really do. And for a long time. This Mayor Beasley resigning kind of pushed the time frame up a little bit on me. But prior to that, I mean, it's been over a year that I've been talking about it and had an interest in running for this position. I've spent my entire career in public service, practically my entire career with the Brandon Valley School District, serving there as their business manager. And I have a passion for Brandon, the school, and the community. I love this place, both the school and the community. I want to be part of continuing to make it a great community and making it successful. It's going to take everybody. I just want to be a part of that. As I said, 29 years of local government experience. I've been at, I don't know, I should count them, how many school board meetings. More than probably some of the people in the room have been alive. Lots of school board meetings, so I've run the local government meetings and have a feel for that, the parliamentary procedure and all that stuff. So I think that's a key piece in the interim time frame here. I currently am responsible for a $44 million annual operating budget for the school district. I have a $2 million monthly payroll, which encompasses about 550 employees. As I was jotting some notes down, about 400 of those employees live in the Brandon Valley School District, not the city of Brandon. I couldn't determine that, but the school is a big economic engine for the city of Brandon. With that kind of money, a $2 million monthly payroll, a lot of them are in the city of Brandon. And I've also been part of $75 million of what I consider large building projects, building schools, major remodels. So I am familiar with the process of construction, infrastructure, all that. I think that would be a plus for the council. I'll be happy to answer your questions now.
I'll go ahead and start. So same questions. So the first question that I asked the other candidate, can you explain your vision of how the city will provide customer service to our residents?
Yes. Customer service is a very key part in local government. It's just integral. And the council and the mayor are kind of the face of that. They're out in the community, but the real piece is those people sitting over there, the people that are in there day to day in City Hall. And they have to be cognizant of the fact that we're here to serve. And in the school district, I've always been really big on that the face of the school is that person. When we walk in, it's so critical to have good customer relations for those people that are coming in and day to day. And I think our employees as you asked that question, I had time to vet it a little bit as I'm sitting out here, a little advantage maybe. But what came to my mind was the late Jimmy Fierstead, when you guys had hired him as a city employee. He knew nothing about what you guys hired him to do, but you know, he was just a great guy and he was very hands-on and he could learn the stuff, but everybody that knows him knows that he was the guy that spoke to all the community members and just, you know, would have conversations with anybody he saw down the street, and that was a huge benefit for the city of Brandon. That gentleman brought a lot of goodwill to this city. I don't know if you all had the opportunity to know him, but that was just a very good example, I thought, of that question.
Same question that I asked TJ earlier. What do you think of the proposed ordinance change as it relates to the aldermanic form of government and the responsibilities as mayor?
I think with Brandon, the city council, I think we could consider ourselves a strong city manager form of government. That's how I consider it anyhow. It's a strong city manager form of government. The council and the mayor were a policy board. I also want to make clear that I think the council and the mayor have equal powers. I look at it as equal powers. There's no more power with one than the other. One just serves as conducting the meeting. The mayor can appoint these positions, but I'm a firm believer that the council has to vet and approve any hiring, firings. It has to run through the council. It cannot just be a one-man, one-woman show. It has to run through the whole council. Now, I don't know exactly how the city government is set up and how your ordinance is going, if the mayor still appoints that, but if they do still appoint that, it has to be a process where the city council approves and vets those appointments, in my opinion.
I'll ask the same piggyback question. Paul, if you were appointed mayor, would there be any immediate staffing changes that you would feel the need to discuss?
No.
Okay.
Not me.
I'll keep going since I've got a couple more. Same question I asked TJ. What is one thing that you feel the city is doing really well right now?
As you walk up to the podium and you walk by the hallway right here, the board, you have two plaques up there that designate you as the community of the year. So over the years, obviously, we've done some really good things well. And to get specific, I think, for what we're doing well right now, one thing that pops into my mind that it's just the answer to city government, I think, when we look at this stuff, you get blamed for everything and you get no credit for anything. If we look back at our city council and the issues that we've had, and the sewer issue was a huge, huge issue. I mean, it was the issue that was all over the news a couple years ago. And you as a city council have solved that problem and solved it well, in my opinion. That's one of the biggest things that we've done very, very well here recently. I did also think that our economic development in the Brandon, commercial growth is going very well. I think the various strip malls that are going up, I call it the boutique strip mall, RB strip mall. Alliance is now starting their strip mall over there with the post office. Great things are happening there. Housing growth promotes commercial growth. It's key to your success. I think we're seeing some of the fruits of that starting to pan out now. All those spaces are not filled yet, but I think they will be. It's been a big boom for this community. Another specific thing that we're currently involved in with the water, I think that with the water committee and whatnot, and you guys have implemented some conservation, education, and practices, it's been a good thing. I think it's resonated with some of the residents, a lot of the residents. We'll continue and make it even better, but I really do think that water conservation has resonated with the citizens of Brandon.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, what do you think is an area that needs immediate improvement?
Obviously, coming to the board meetings, we talk a lot about water, and it's become a big issue, and it should be. The citizens are passionate about it. They just are very passionate about it, and it's separated some people in our community. So I think that what I'd like to do is try to promote some consensus building on the council, and communicate that to the residents of our community, get the council together, and if we're together, then the community is together. I truly believe that, so I'd like to build some consensus amongst the council and pass that on to the residents of our town. Without it, we don't get anything done. We really don't.
Okay. What leadership skills will you bring to the council, and how will those skills prepare us for the challenges that lie ahead as mayor?
The biggest asset I think I bring to the council is my, as I said before, my sincere and genuine interest in helping us build our community. It's right here. It's from my heart. There's no hidden agenda here. There's no nothing. I just want to give back to the community that's been very good to me. I've raised my family through my employment at the Brandon Valley School District, and all you folks are the ones that are paying me in that position, and it's been very good to me. And it's my way of I say paying it forward. We consider paying it back. It's just, I want to continue in public service. So I think that'll be a skill set that I'll be able to pass on. My 29 years within a local government, I think will be valuable to you. Just knowing the ropes, knowing local government. As TJ mentioned earlier, government doesn't move as fast as the private sector. It takes some time. We all want it to move faster. Most of you folks are all in the private sector. I came from the private sector. We all want it to move faster, but I know after all the years I've spent there, no matter what you do, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know who can change that, but it's not going to be me. I know that because I've been trying to do that for all these years at the school district, and there's just certain set of rules that people have to follow in government that just take time and whatnot. So I'm familiar with all those rules and skill sets to promote that. I have acquired a lot of business relationships over the years with my school district dealings. I think will be valuable to the council. I have a good relationship with our neighbors to the west, the city of Sioux Falls. I think those are valuable relationships. I understand that you guys have, and you might still be doing it, meeting with the city of Sioux Falls Council, and I think that's a very good idea. They're our neighbors. They're our friends. Any problems that we've encountered, they've probably done it 10 times over and solved them. So I think that's a very important relationship that we have, and just all the other business relationship, architects, engineers that have had through my dealings at the school, I think will be beneficial to the council and to the city.
Just curiosity question on the style that you would choose for running the meetings with the public comments part.
I am a big fan of what Mrs. Fish changed in the board meetings. I think, in fact, when I met with her and dealing with it, I told her that same thing, that I was a big fan of that. I think it is a good way to handle that, the 5 minutes at the beginning. I think that's a good way. And then if there are issues that go south or go a different direction for us, I think the council themselves, if they have an expert out in the audience, can ask to speak to that person and get their opinion at that point. I think that's a good way to handle that. Once again, I get the advantage of hearing the question. I was thinking about the gentleman, Stan Schoeneman, sitting behind me. If there's a housing question or whatever, well, he should know what the answer to that is. So that's how I would handle that. I would continue it just as Barb has, the 5 minutes at the beginning, and only upon request of the council or mayor to get community input after that.
So you touched on it a little bit already in dialogue, but just to be fair, what relationships have you already built that you would really leverage in this role?
I really, like you said, I touched on it. I think the city of Sioux Falls relationship will be very beneficial to the city of Brandon. I know a lot of those people over there. When we went through the sewer issue, I spoke to a lot of those guys over there too. The city public works director, Mark Cotter, and I think that'll be a valuable relationship. All the local engineers and architects, at some point I've dealt with most all of them with all the school dealings I've had. I think those will be valuable. Vendor relationships. But the city of Sioux Falls would specifically be the most important one to me right now.
How does the city and the school system benefit through cooperative efforts, and how do you see your role as not only the business manager but the potential mayor for those efforts?
That has come up, the dreaded conflict of interest words and stuff, and I have spoken to my board of education at the school, and they are very supportive of me running running for this position, and I think that just speaks well because they think it'll be a plus for them. They look at the glass being half full rather than half empty. It'll be a plus for them in addition to a plus for the city. And we have worked on a lot of things together. I had, prior to this, jotted some things down that have been very good for the city of Brandon in the Brandon Valley School District. We coordinated on the library project. The city library that we have not right now is attached to the high school. You guys put a lot of money up front on that to build it. Now we maintain it. Throughout the years, we pay for all the utilities, all the maintenance of that building and custodian stuff. And it was just a great relationship. The school resource officer I jotted down, we've coordinated on the tennis court project. That was a combination of city, school, community, the tennis courts that are out there. Fabulous complex. I mean, we host ESD and Metro tennis meets now because of that relationship to get that built. Various playgrounds that we've coordinated on, the city has piggybacked on the school on playgrounds that we've built, so I think it's a good relationship. The city now purchases all their fuel from the Brandon Valley School District bus barn, and it was a, I know Brian will attest to this, that yeehaw, that was a good deal. Because you guys, I remember you guys having to do that on a monthly basis to quote that out, and it was just a pain in the rear. And those cooperative projects are what it should be. That's the way how city and school should work together. And I think it could just get better with myself sitting in a chair back there.
Piggyback on that for just a second. In the paper, it talked a little bit about this as well, as it being a potential conflict of interest, and you had stated that you didn't see it as being a conflict of interest in most cases. So I'm just wanting to clarify a little bit, what would those cases potentially be that would be a conflict, and what would that look like at the time?
I thought to myself that same question, and I said, okay, what's going to come up? I don't think I could, as a council person or as a mayor, you know, depending on how it goes, I can't vote on the school district school resource officer. That's just, I'd recuse myself. I'm out of that. It's a situation that the other council people would have to do because it is a monetary, significant monetary arrangement for the city, and I'd have to just take myself out of that. Beyond that, Dana, I did not come up with a lot of things that I would have to be recused from. The SRO is one of the main things that popped into my mind specifically. I don't know if any of the council thought of any other things that would be something. I just really couldn't come up with a lot, though. I'm sure it'll happen. Pardon?
There's a staff person that'll tell you, so that's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
we have that person, so they'll help. But, so with that, the last question that I have, should you not be selected, how will you be active and help our community?
I will continue to do the same things that I've done for the 29 years I've lived in Brandon, continuing my position as the business manager of the Brandon Valley School District, continue to be active in all the community boards that I sit on. I'm a big believer in that, and as I said, that it's my time to give back. I'm of the age now where I can start to give back some of the things that I've gotten in return from the community of Brandon. And all the boards, the Development Foundation, Community Foundation, continue to be active in those. Just business as usual, I guess I would say. It'd be just like today. My day would be the same.
And just to piggyback on that, TJ was very clear that he would run in the spring. Would you also run in the spring if you do not get appointed?
That would be my intent right now, Mr. Bastian.
Left. So same question about the water. If you're the mayor, you're going to get asked a lot about the water and whether or not it's safe to drink. What would you say as the mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
As
then,
TJ said, I mean, I've been here, drank the water the whole time, and probably longer than anybody, and I'm still, the reason I limp is not because of the water, it's because of a stroke that I had. So yes, very much.
And then what would you want your mayoral legacy to be, assuming that you ran and won in the spring and served 4 years?
Yes, if I can just take off a little bit on the water issue too, a little bit, if I can expound on that answer. I think the way I see the water issue, there's three problems that we have. Availability of additional water, storage of water, and the quality of our water. And I think the last council meeting with the budget you passed pretty significantly tried to solve the storage of water with that passing of that budget with the new water towers that you're building and stuff. But as I was preparing for this, all three of these come at a cost. We all know that, and that's what you've been dealing with lately. The citizens are passionate about the quality of the water. And as you guys are doing right now, before I'm even anywhere involved in this thing, you're vetting that whole thing with the study that you're performing. I think that'll come out and have some very good recommendations in there. And then you weigh the cost, like any council does, any local government, you weigh the cost versus the benefit of that, knowing full well that our citizens are passionate about the water right now. And so that's what I want. And we have to come up with innovative ideas on how to maybe fund those things. If it's outside of our realm of annual budgets, maybe the issuance of debt might be a possibility. If it's that important of a need or want of our community, then we can look at issuance of debt or some alternative financing needs is what I jotted down. Legacy, Dana, I would hope that my legacy would be just one word or two words, consensus building. I really am big on that, and I think a strong point to get everybody on the same page and then pass that on to the community. If you guys up front are on the same page, and I think we all are, we want a better Brandon. We want a great Brandon, and we all want the end result to be a good city of Brandon. And if we just resonate that to the community, things are good. And then the outside noise dissipates. So I think that's the big key. That's what I'd like to be known for, that he builds consensus.
Any other questions, council? Okay, so I'll ask my final question then, Paul. So you're in a little different position than TJ. So you're going to be an empty nester next year after Kate's gone. And that's a transition, but maybe you guys are going to want to go down south for the winter. How do you feel your time commitment will be allocated? Will you have time? Will you be around?
Yes. Just like TJ, I mean, I've talked to my family about this decision. They're 100% behind me on that. And I had the chance to experience it a little bit. My daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, was gone all summer as a page in the United States Senate. So she was in Washington, D.C. all summer. Just about drove me nuts. Two things, she's gone and I'm not coaching softball. I mean, what else could go wrong with my life? Just about Sandy and I sat in our living room looking at each other, and we would take off and drive to try to find people that we'd never met in our life to pull up in their driveway, and it drove us nuts to not have Kate around and whatnot. So that was the one example that I thought I'll give my heart and soul to everything and anything I do. School, city, give you 100% of what I got.
Thanks, Paul. Any other questions, council? Okay, so for the good of the cause?
Yep, that's the plan. We've got it on the October 1st or Monday's council meeting. One of the first things on the agenda is the appointment.
Okay, all right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming.
Thank you very
Audience,
much.
thank you for coming. Appreciate your interest and your support. And if I could have a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion by, motion by Wakefield, second by Bastian what are we doing? Adjourn, thank you, man. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, all right, we are done.